Miss Barbara, welcome to the podcast. So great to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to dig in.
I have your tax coach, the one and only, on the podcast today. I'm really excited to get into this topic. I mean, we're recording here in February of 2022, and it's deep into tax season. You were just mentioning how busy you are getting ready for that, but I think it's a really important topic for people to talk about right now as they're planning for their taxes. And I just wanted to talk about taxes and strategies and some of the things that business owners are facing right now and some of the strategies that you're seeing in the world. And so I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too.
You know, the thing about taxes is that it's the number one expense that most people have in their life, and we don't really think about it. It's mostly an afterthought, right? We think about our house, our furniture, our cars as our biggest expense we have in our life. But actually, once you have some financial success, you actually spend more time on taxes than you did on anything else. And so it's really important to have this subject matter on the podcast and on people's mind. And I'm really glad that you're here to talk about it. I guess let's start with sort of how you got into this work. You have a very cool, fun vibe in your approach to taxes and the culture of your company. And I think it's really different than the culture of taxes and how people approach taxes or how people think about tax firms. So just tell us a little bit about how you got here and the evolution of all of it, and go through that.
Yeah, man, if I were to go like way far back in my childhood, I always saw my parents have crazy money issues and they are addicts. And so I knew from like a young age, I wanted to help people with money. I just had no idea like in what capacity that would happen. And so when I was in college, I got pregnant. And so I went to my career counselor and I was like, I was already a business major, but that's so broad, right? Mm-hmm. And so I went to my career counselor and I was like, all right, I'm pregnant. What is like the 100% chance that I would get a job? What industry do I need to go in? And they were like, accounting. And I was like, accounting? Like, really? It sounds so boring. But so I switched to accounting because I was like, I'm having a little boy and I need to provide for him. And so I ended up getting a job, an internship every summer in college with the largest accounting firm in the world. And then went on after that to work with them and quickly moved on because literally they had us work 100 hours a week. They had sleeping pods on our floor because we were there so much. Like, it was crazy. And to have a newborn on top of it. So I moved on. My manager there recruited me at another firm. And no matter what firm I worked at, I realized they all sucked. Like, none of them were actually saving their clients money in taxes. They were literally just having them pay these fees to file forms, and that was it. And the clients would complain all the time. They'd complain about not getting tax savings, no value, their communication sucked. And so finally, a couple of years ago, I was literally crying to my husband about a situation that had happened. And he was like, well, what if you just opened your own firm? And I was like, why have I like literally never thought of that before? I was always like ingrained in me, like you just kind of go through the process and you'll become a manager and then a director and maybe one day you'll become a partner. And that was just so in my brain. But then I was like, you know what? I can start my own accounting firm and I'm going to do it different. And we're only going to do tax strategy. We're only going to save people money in taxes. And we're going to communicate in a way that they actually understand. And luckily, like, it's just like blown up. People are like, oh my gosh, you're like so different than everyone else.
It's a fresh of breath air, right? It's
Yeah.
a breath of fresh air, right?
There you go.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so you've saved clients millions of dollars in taxes. Tell me about what that means when you save taxes. We're not talking about tax avoidance. I know there's two different things, right? There's tax avoidance and there's tax planning, or I'm not sure what the other one is. But like, one is illegal and one you shouldn't be doing, and one is just a smart approach to taxes. And so tell us a little bit about that philosophy.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about, so tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion. Illegal.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't really even like to call it tax avoidance. That sounds kind of weird. Really, what we do, we dig into business owners' businesses, find deductions that they weren't taking or that their old accountants told them no, just because they didn't know the Internal Revenue Code as well as we do. And so it's just digging in, finding deductions that they're missing, using loopholes that are legal and everyone else uses them, so there's no reason you can't, and getting them back money. So when a new strategy client comes on, we'll of course implement strategies for now for 2022, but we can also go back to 2018 and amend all those tax returns. So for example, yesterday I posted a picture. I'm holding all these envelopes. They're all 2018 tax returns because we can't e-file them. You have to paper mail them, which takes so long. It annoys me. But I'm holding these envelopes. It's over $500,000 in overpaid taxes that people paid. And it's just like so cool because it's literally checks in the mail that these clients will get from the IRS from overpaid taxes.
I think that's amazing. And I think that, a lot of business owners, everybody has their own CPA. Everyone has either their tax advisor, or maybe they're doing it themselves, right? Through QuickBooks or Quicken or whatever these softwares are. Why is it so important to have somebody that really knows what they're doing? I think people cheap out. They think like, well, she's just going to do everything that, I can probably figure out myself, or I'll just deduct everything and I'll deal with an audit. Like what is the differentiator in the way that people should think about tax planning?
First thing is you always want to be ahead of it, right? I think the accounting industry kind of got this, they have it backwards. Like you're doing a tax return for something that happened a year ago, but now it's too late to fix anything. So you really need to work with someone that you can talk with throughout the year. So for example, all of our clients already know what they were going to owe in 2021 in December, because we've been working with them all year, having meetings, planning, saving them money. So it was not a surprise to them. Like their taxes are already paid. They're good. The strategies are already implemented. So it's also like on the client where like you can't just go to your accountant in April and be like, all right, time to save some money in taxes. It's like you have to be a little bit more accountable too and be like, all right, we're going to meet every quarter, or I need a meeting every quarter, every month, whatever. Doesn't matter, what the consulting fee is or what the person charges, It's so valuable if you can get ahead of it, because once December 31st, once the New Year's kiss happens, like there's not a whole lot you can do. So I would say the first thing is like be proactive and find an accountant that will meet with you through the year. I hear it all the time from like new prospects coming in. They're like, my accountant just like won't meet with me, or I email them, it takes them 2 weeks to respond or something like that. And I don't know why that is, but find someone that will actually meet with you through the year.
I also wonder how many people want to actually think about taxes throughout the year, right? And so there's probably like this subconscious avoidance of, I don't really want to talk about tax planning or how much my cost burden will be until the very end. And I think what I'm hearing from you is like planning, I'm thinking about it even in my life, like which quarters do I keep missing that I need to stop missing? And so I think that's really, really good advice. What advice do you give to clients, either new or existing, that people need to hear, but they don't listen to you? They don't follow up. They don't take your advice for whatever reason. And why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it all comes down to money mindset when you like really dig deep into it. Like taxes and just money in general, like have such a bad rap. And like, when you think about taxes, like, and people always tell me like, I'm afraid of the IRS, or I'm afraid to go to jail, or afraid of this or that. That is what they want, right? That's what you hear on the news. Like, that's exactly, you're playing into their plan, right? There's nothing to be afraid of. I always tell people like, there's only 12 pages in the Internal Revenue Code that actually tell you that you have to pay taxes. The other 7,000 pages is how to get out of paying taxes. So they're there for a reason, And so really mindset. So working on like being able to be open and talk about your money. Like a lot of people just don't want to talk about money, finances, investing, retirement at all. Like it's just this taboo topic. And I always joke with my friends, like, hey, let's talk about our retirement funds. Like we're open to talking about sex, but why is retirement taboo, right? Like it's kind of this weird. So I think just feeling like you can trust whoever you're talking to, your accountant or financial advisor, anyone like that, to be like, all right, these are my fears. This is what I don't like, and kind of break through those. And then you can have more open conversations.
What have you experienced in your own money mindset as you've got into this career? And, what is the type of mindset we need to have if we are concerned or afraid of dealing with this, or perhaps keep pushing it off? What's the right mentality to have?
The first one I would say is like, most people are stuck in a scarcity mindset, like, oh, I'm afraid to pay for this, or not enough money is coming in here. When really, like, if you just have an abundant mindset, like money flows easily and naturally to me, or I am grateful to be paying for this. There's a book, I'm blanking on the name, but it's about Asian cultures where when you meet someone, you hand them your wallet, and it's not because they want to know what's in your wallet. They feel it to see if your wallet feels yucky, like kind of stressed, or if it feels abundant, right?
Wow.
And their mentality is like, every time you swipe your card, you should feel grateful that you're able to pay for something. And so I would say switching to like an abundant mindset. And then also, I always tell people, like, yes, we will save you the most amount of money we can in taxes, but also, like, it's a privilege actually to pay taxes. That means that you made money,
Right.
like,
yeah, that's a common whole, right?
Yeah. And if you pay more in taxes this year than you did last year, that means you did better. So, I always tell people.
I think some people have either a strategy where they don't really do any planning, and then whatever the taxes are, they pay. And then there's some people who are expecting that my taxes should be zero. Mm-hmm. Should taxes be zero? And is there sort of this, and I know it's probably different for everybody based on their situation, but like what would you advise that? Like, what's the right expectation to be like, yeah, I pay a fair amount of taxes, or I don't, or I pay too much, or I pay less? Is it different for everybody, or what is your thoughts on that?
I think it is different for everybody, and we kind of get that out of our clients when we first meet them. Like, what's your view on taxes? Like, how, and I don't even like to use the word risky or conservative do you want to be, because nothing that we do is risky. It only seems risky if you don't actually know the laws, but so that they can relate, we use that word. And so it's like, what's your risk tolerance? How much do you want to write off? Because we can make you taxable zero. That's not a problem. But are you willing to buy the assets that have to come with that? Or are you willing to do these investments that can get you to do that? Or using these loopholes? So is it possible? Yes. Do most clients want to pay zero? Yes. But also, I think taxes are necessary to some degree. Mm-hmm. We all need roads, we all need schools, we all need those types of things. Is it misused a lot of the times? Heck yes. But there needs to be, something, not zero for everybody, but.
So yeah. Business owners have a lot of options, right? With deductions and expenses, and they can write off cars and all this kind of different things. I would love to talk to you about real estate and your perspective about that when it comes to taxes, but also, what advice you have for people potentially that just have a W-2. Are there creative tax strategies that help those people reduce their taxes? Yeah.
So if anyone's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? He talks about the 4 quadrants, and it's always, if you're a W-2 employee, you're kind of screwed. You pay the most in taxes, right? Now there's a few ways, like you can max out your retirement, right, to lower your taxable income. You can do HSAs, traditional IRAs, all of that. So investment strategies. You can also, there are investments you can invest into that will lower your taxes. For example, conservation easements, which, have you heard of those?
I have. Why don't you explain that to the audience? Yeah.
They're kind of, they're still crazy to me, right? Like, I'm in taxes and we do them for clients, and it's still like, how are these around? But basically the super simplified version of it is, say you wanted to buy a property for $1 million. So you go out and buy a piece of land for $1 million, and then you hire me, the appraiser, to say, hey, if I developed on this piece of land, how much would it be worth? And I go out and I appraise it and I say, $5 million is what it would be worth if you developed on it. And you're like, well, nah, I'm just going to contribute it to a conservation company and this land can never be developed on. And then you get a $5 million charitable deduction on your tax return, even though you only paid $1 million, is the gist of it, right? Now, the companies doing the conservation easements, they will always get audited. The IRS has said, like, you literally have to file it with the Office of Tax Shelter. They will get audited. However, that doesn't mean you're going to lose the audit. It just means they're going to look and make sure you dotted all your I's, crossed your T's. But they're super cool. So for our high income W-2 earners, if you're making $1 million and you're going to owe $400,000 in taxes, why don't you just put $100,000 into a conservation easement? You get a $500,000 charitable deduction, and it helps that way. So that's a conservation easement that will help for W-2 people. Same with like oil and gas investments. Mm-hmm. You can typically get like a 90% tax deduction there. And there's other like passive investment things you can do too. You can get pretty creative with that. But for the most part, I would also tell them, get a side hustle, create some sort of business, you probably have some sort of passion or hobby or something that we can turn into a business and run expenses through there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most commonly used strategy, right? Is to have a little side hustle, start a little business and get a K-1 and start deducting expenses, right? Mm-hmm. Run your operating expenses through that business. What do you see in terms of the trends of taxes? You've gone through a few administrations here. This is a really tax heavy administration, and it's a Democratic administration right now. It'll probably keep getting worse until maybe there's a political change. Who knows, right? What are you seeing right now, and what is your expectation here in the next few years from a tax perspective?
Yeah, taxes are going to have to go up just because of the deficit. So unless they somehow magically find a way to fix the deficit, which they will not, taxes have to go up. So that's a fact. Mm-hmm. Now, who they're going to increase taxes on, unfortunately, it's always the middle class, right? The rich will always find a way to pay less in taxes. And the people that are in the higher tax brackets are politicians too. So they're not going to pass laws that screw themselves over, if you think about that. So unfortunately, probably the middle class will get affected from Biden's tax proposals. Just in general, I think cryptocurrency is going to be huge in the next few years. There's a lot of case law coming out with, they say it's new. It's not a new thing, but it's new for the IRS. They're really, really cracking down on crypto, even though there's not a lot of case law to back it. Mm-hmm. You'll notice on this year's tax returns, they ask you if you have any cryptocurrency before they even ask you if you have kids. So like they want to know your crypto before they even want to know about your kiddos. So crypto will be hot. NFTs, of course, once you get into
so they're going to start going after all these gains that people are making on crypto and NFTs, which is probably expected. It's probably good for those markets that those markets are starting to become more regulated in taxes too. It's like as it gets more standardized, it's healthy for markets. Yeah,
and more legitimizes it, right? Like it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Yep. And the cannabis industry too is also super hot with the IRS. It's not federally legal, so they have a lot of different deductions and it's a whole different like tax code basically. But I see that really changing in the next few years.
Do you work with a lot of people from overseas, or mostly people most people that are in domestic? Like people that are overseas having businesses in the U.S. or potentially they're citizens of the U.S. and have businesses overseas? International tax?
Have clients that are international or like digital nomads that live abroad and they still have to pay taxes. And we have clients that are willing to move and have moved to Puerto Rico just to save in taxes, or the Cayman Islands, things like that. But that's always kind of like my last suggestion. I will never suggest it if they come to me. Like I had a client last week, he's like, I'm making $10 million this year. I'm willing to move to Puerto Rico. How do we make it happen? I'm like, all right, if you're willing to go there and live there for 183 days and be able to prove it. But yeah, I always kind of in the forefront, it's always like, let's save you in taxes, like in all of our strategies first. And then if you still don't like your tax rates, you can move abroad or do other things. But
another thing kind of switching 90 degrees is like you have a really cool team. You call yourselves the cool tax ladies. You're an all women's run organization, if I'm not mistaken, and you're attracting this fun talent into, as we mentioned before, sort of an industry that has a stigma, right? How are you able to do that? Because I think there's a lot of listeners who are, for example, I've experienced that. I'm in the furniture business and it's not the sexiest business in the world, but like you have to make that sexy to attract good talent, right? So I'd love to hear from you kind of how you've been able to do that and what works for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to like my first hire. It was someone I knew. We had crossed paths like years ago. And I had met her at an event and I saw how she ran an event. And I was like, well, if she can run an event that well, she can like run basically an executive assistant, right? She can run a business really well. So that's kind of how I found her. But in terms of like the tax professionals, when we put out ads for employment, we really lead with our social media, with our core values and our company mission. And like, if they're not on board with our company mission to save people money and build wealth in a really fun and entertaining and educational way, like they're just not going to fit the culture. And they just naturally get weeded out in the interview process, right? If we get someone on the interview and they're like super quiet and, has terrible communication skills or just, you can just tell. So I would say like, be really specific in your employment ads on who you are, what you do, and like, don't be afraid to tell them who you are. Like, I feel like a lot of times when you're putting ads out there, you don't want to put what company like you're hiring for, but it's like, let them do their own research. Right. They'll walk away if they're like, oh, these people talk a lot. They like do reels on Instagram. Like, I'm not doing that, And honestly, we have a really good recruiter too. So she knows our company values and she weeds out a lot of the bad apples. But yeah, get clear on core values and your mission.
What do you hope for your business and your mission for the next 5 years?
We're really like just on a mission to save as many people as we can. In taxes is kind of like how we lead, but also because of that, because we're already in everyone's finances, like they come to us for investing, finance, like all of their questions, crypto. They know I'm like super into cryptocurrency. And so just really like helping people elevate their whole financial picture, not just in taxes. It's just kind of like what brings people to me. And then I'm like, I got you. So yeah, saving people money. That's it.
This question just popped in my head because I think most people come to tax advisors to help them save on taxes, but no one really asks the tax advisors what they do with their money. And I'd love to ask you, like, where do you put your money? How do you think about wealth creation and wealth management, either short-term or long-term?
Yeah, good question. So we honestly invest in everything because I just want to know about everything for my clients. And so cryptocurrency is huge. We buy and hold crypto for like a long-term investment. We have a crypto gaming team abroad that we really love. It's a company that's blowing up, and we like it because it provides jobs to third world countries. We kind of poach them from Google and Apple and tell them we'll pay you 3 times as much. And so less of an investment. I just like that because we're providing jobs. But what else? We've invested in franchises. We have invested in startup tech companies. We have a bunch of real estate, short-term and long-term. Stocks are kind of my last hoorah. Like, it's kind of like crypto first, private investments, real estate, and maybe at the end stock.
I'm a big believer in crypto too, but there's definitely a lot of naysayers. Give us some clarity on why you're so optimistic about crypto. You're coming from a very analytical perspective. I think a lot of people are probably coming from a like a pump and dump, or, I want to make money fast. But as an expert, you've probably done a lot of analysis in that space. Tell us a little bit about how you look at that, not only from an investment standpoint, but potentially how there is a tax benefit to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's not going anywhere, right? Like, governments are investing into Bitcoin and various other cryptocurrencies. It's not going anywhere. Facebook changed their name to Meta. Like, the metaverse is not going anywhere. These huge billion-dollar companies aren't going to let it fail, let alone governments, right? El Salvador just announced it's going to create a $1 billion fund for Bitcoin City and Bitcoin Beach. And so, that's kind of like more in the news in governments. But when you look at what it actually is and the utility behind it, it makes complete sense. It all comes down to the blockchain and what these various cryptocurrencies and blockchains can do. And they're really cool. And it's really where we're going with technology. Like, forget the money and the currency aspect of it. But when you think of, even from a cash perspective, governments want crypto to work, even though they will never say that, because cash will go away and then they can completely track your transactions. There's no hiding it, right? So from a tax and government perspective, they want it to work. But also from a utility standpoint, like putting health records on the blockchain so that, one person, you could have your entire health record from your entire life, rather than calling a doctor in Washington and a doctor in Arkansas that you lived 30 years ago, right? Everything will be in one place. So there's just so much utility behind it that, I don't know, I like it. And
I love it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not going anywhere. And, we talk a lot about Web 3.0, Meta. Like, I'm right there with you. I think people can't ignore it. I think there's a lot of hesitation because people just don't understand. I think that's where most of that hesitation is coming from. Let me ask you more personally, as a high performer, and I ask this question on the podcast a lot because it's fascinating to me, but as a high performer, do you have a personal routine on a daily basis that helps you get up and get out and perform at your best?
Yeah, first thing is I don't turn my phone on till 10 a.m. So if I break that, like, my whole day is screwed up.
Really?
So, yeah, my phone's in my office when I turn it off at night, I turn it off like at 8 o'clock. So that way I'm not scrolling mindlessly and I can just kind of like wind down from the day, and I don't turn it on until 10 a.m. But so that would be the first thing, is like no technology. Then it's just really like kiddo time in the morning, getting them ready for school and breakfast and all of that. Once they're gone, I have kind of from 8 to 10 to myself. I have to go on a walk to just like clear my head. I'm a terrible human being if I don't like work out or go on a walk. So yeah, I have to walk. Then I either read or journal. Journaling has been like so impactful in like manifesting and being abundant and like being able to just like attract the high vibe clients that we have. So a lot of it, yeah, no technology, journaling, walking, reading. I feel like it's the same thing for everyone, and everyone wants this like magic pill of like, well, what's a perfect morning routine?
You're damn right. I asked that question to almost everybody on the podcast, and everyone has a little bit of a different routine, but they have a routine. And so I think why I like to keep talking about it is like building that consistency and that discipline, and is if listeners are really paying attention, like every person on the podcast who I would, consider a high performer or somebody that has achieved a level of success in their life has a routine and they stick to it. And if you don't get the results you want, it's most likely because you don't have consistency. And so that's really the message I'm trying to get through. I love how you said about the journaling. I've been really leaning into journaling too, and like being grateful and writing things down and like manifesting from that place of what I want. It's amazing the energy that comes from that, right? And what it can create. Yeah.
It literally does something chemically in your brain. So that you're more focused on the gratitude, you're more focused on the abundance or your goals, whatever you're writing down. So
what keeps you up at night, or what are you most afraid of?
Oh gosh. Honestly, that like my kids won't want to hang out with me when they're older. We talk about that all the time. We're like, I mean, our kids think we're cool right now, but like when they're in college, I want to visit them and be like the cool mom.
How old are your kids?
11, 9, and 4.
Oh, baby. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah, that's always a concern. I have 2 little girls. I'm concerned about that too. Right now, they still want mommy, but they sometimes want me. So.
And with girls, you're probably concerned about boys.
Yes. I tell that to my wife, and I think my wife is blocking that out of her brain right now. As we wrap up, let me ask you one final question. For you, what does it mean to live a rich life?
Freedom of time and freedom of location. So just being able to live a life that, like, my friend just texted me right before this podcast and was like, hey, want to go to Scottsdale in 2 weeks? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Just like no hesitation, live life however you want and with no like constriction.
I love it. Well, listen, Barbara, thank you so much for your time. If people want to reach out to you, learn more about you, I know you're really active on social. Your website is actually great, and we'll put all those links in. But how can people reach out to you, and what's the best way?
Instagram. We're on Instagram all day. So DM us if you have tax questions or just want to chat.
I appreciate your time, and thanks so much for dropping all this knowledge, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.